Hey, just call me Cow. We'll go with that. Normally I go by Super Cow, but there's so many usernames like that already picked, so we're just going to go with that. This podcast is generally going to be done by my phone, but because I drive for a living. But I will be recording sometimes at my house with better equipment. But I have too many thoughts while I'm driving every day not to take advantage of the time. And just a warning for everybody, this is going to be a political rant pretty much every time I upload one of these. So, I mean, if you're down with that, cool. And I guess I should start with where my leanings are. I am pretty in the middle on most things. I try to look at both sides, which I think every responsible voter should. You should not be looking at one side or the other and being like, this is it, everything is right about this. No, that's not how it works. Because you can vote for what's best for you, but most of the time when you vote for what's best for just you, you're screwing over a lot of other people. And it's kind of no fault of our own as voters, because politicians are normally very split too. Yeah, so I guess just do what you do. But as far as like issues go, I don't like try to take a radical stance on anything. You know, I'm more center left when I took the test, but I'm very more on the libertarian side. Generally speaking, I want the government to leave me alone, leave me and my friends alone. Regulations where they need to be, where there's abuses of power, but as far as that, just let us do what the fuck we want to do. You know, like I shouldn't have to go get a permit to, plant a tree in my yard. You know what I mean? Well, in some cases, I don't know. Homeowners associations are a little weird. A little bit more background on me. I grew up in a very poor area of my city. Me and my family struggled very hard along with everybody else around us. This was a very mixed bag of as far as races around us. So never really had, me and most of my friends never really had to worry about racist topics too much because we all didn't care, you know. The old saying goes, when you're starving, there's no time to worry about global warming. Well, when you're struggling every day with you and yours, there's really no time to worry about the little crap like that. And that's the position I'm coming at here. The regular old worker. I work, 40 to 60 hours a week. I don't have a billion hours to devote to, political discourse online. I just don't. Like a lot of the content creators that I've watched in the past, that, some of them are more controversial, some of them are provocative, and they're both from the left and the right. And I try to find people to listen to during my routes that are more like me, like they are on their side, they're on the left or they're on the right, but they have more of a centric view of things. They're not extreme. Like they don't think they're not, hardcore racist or hardcore communist or whatever. I don't like people that completely dismiss an idea out of hand, and it's really hard, honestly, nowadays. And this is no fault of its own, but because the right has its own problems, but the left, because they're in control of everything, there's more of a focus on them. So it's a lot easier to find people that are more hypocritical on the left nowadays, that are more radical than the left nowadays, because they are in control of everything. And a lot of the left's ideals you have to really think about to actually grasp, which is cool for people that actually have time to do that. A lot of content creators, they sit behind their computers for 14 hours a day streaming or just ranting or making videos. They're not out there in the world meeting people and talking to people every day like I am, like my friends are. I'm in the workforce. I'm meeting people every day, talking to different types of folks. And a lot of the stuff that are on the both... Here's the thing. a lot of the stuff on both the left and the right, people don't give a shit about. A lot of people just don't give a shit. They can't be bothered. They can't be asked to do the research. They can't. So a lot of them will just listen to the local news, or they'll read the local news, or they'll read the national news or whatever. And then you have, you know, the right saying that the left, the national news is all fake news. And it's like, it's not all fake news. There's truth to it. But the problem is you have to read past the framing. You know, I'm a bit of a geek, and I looked it up years ago. And I'll tell you right now, there is a lot of money to be made for clickbait rage shit. You know, getting people pissed off is what pays the fucking bills for a lot of the media. And it sucks. It's like that, but it's literally how they pay the bills. You can go online, look at the analytics for a story about cute puppies as opposed to a story about, you know, the January 6th insurrection or whatever you want to call it. The difference is staggering. You know, I mean, granted, it's a completely different subject matter, but like, you have a regular old story about, you know, somebody doing something nice for somebody else is going to have like 1% of the hits than somebody, you know, yelling at somebody else over some racial shit or whatever, or somebody getting harassed by the cops. You know, stuff, injustice, things to infuriate people gets the clicks. You know, it gets the ratings. You know, it really does. And honestly, like, don't get me wrong, I never liked everything Trump stood for when he was in office. A lot of people were like, oh, he's so fascist. And like, well, you know, I mean, he's a businessman, and businessmen normally, they say and it happens, you know. So he brought that aspect into trying to be the president, which was his first mistake. He had many mistakes, but that was his first mistake. But a lot of people don't realize that that's where he was coming from, you know. A lot of people don't see it that way. They don't see that, okay, he used to be a businessman that normally whenever he said jump, people were like, how high? And now he's in a position where there's checks and balances, and he can't just do whatever he wants, and he can't just sit there and say, oh, well, XY did this, so we'll do this. You have to think about so many different things when you're in a position of power. And I mean, I appreciate what he was trying to do, you know, as he said, draining the swamp type of shit, like getting rid of all the politicians that were there just for the money instead of for the people. I appreciate what he was trying to do, but I don't think he really had what it took to do that. And I know it's going to piss some people off, but, you know, either way, like, I always look at it like, because I knew some people that were like hardcore, like they had Trump derangement syndrome, man. Like every single thing that he said, they were like, oh my God, it's the end of the fucking world. Like they just go fucking batshit crazy. And it drove me nuts. It really did drive me nuts. There was one deal, like I own a house. It took a long time to do it, but I own a house and making payments. Call me an idiot if you wish. I like the fact that I don't have to worry about ever getting kicked out of that motherfucker. But there was a... Sorry, I had to take a hit of a cigarette. So I understand the importance of owning personal property, and I am very much I have a liberal mindset of it's mine, it's important, stay the fuck off of it, you know? So I will support self-defense of your personal property no matter what. I'm sorry, like, I'll do what I can to not make it lethal, but damn it, if you come into my house, the Roomba with the freaking Claymore is coming out, all right? And Alexa is going to warn you and then play some type of Run the Water song. Anyway, not the point. Shit, where was I going with that? This is what happens when I try to record at 4 o'clock in the morning. But the homeowners associations, right? So like, say you own a house, and then all of a sudden they drop low-income housing, like the next block over. Your property value goes down immediately. So if you ever want to resell that house, you are going to lose money. You're just gonna lose money, straight up. because it's statistically true. Even back when I was renting, I didn't give a crap about my rental property. I was renting. It wasn't mine. People that rent don't give a shit about their personal property as much. I mean, yeah, sure, don't touch my freaking shoes or my Xbox. I get that. But as far as the home itself, you know how many apartments I've been in of people that I've met over the years that, it's just destroyed, and they don't give a fuck because it's not theirs. They'll have stuff cleaned up of their stuff, but if there's a hole in the wall, it just stays in the wall. Oh, no, I don't care. I didn't tell the landlord about it. I mean, seriously, come on now. And for that reason, it's just, it doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter what race you are. The town that I'm in, there's just as many, white folks walking around that are poor than there is black folks. And I know that's not disproportional, but still, you still have it's not about race, it's about class. The lower class is in an area of people that own houses, their property value goes down. It's just as simple as that. So, you turn around, and when Trump says something about, remember he said something about he was not going to support people just, dropping freaking low-income housing in the middle of neighborhoods, and this guy went absolutely ballistic. He's like, there's no denying it now. He's a white supremacist. He's a stupid-ass racist. I was like, he wasn't the one bringing up race, dude. You are. Why are you assuming all those people in the low-income houses or housing are black? It's that mentality, man. It's that mentality of it doesn't, it drives me nuts. It's like, if you're going to constantly look at things for race, it's making you a bigger racist than anybody else. And I'm not talking about the new version of what racism is supposed to mean. I'm talking about the historical version of racism, where you're judging people and being prejudiced of people of the color of their skin instead of the content of their character. That's when I say racist, that's what I talk about. And that's not the world that I grew up in. That is not the town that I grew up in. Okay? That hasn't been us forever. And then all of a sudden, the last couple of years, it is gone, and especially this last year, it is blown up. And it is so out there. It is so infuriating that, we used to walk around and not give a shit about that, hold the door for each other, have big old cookouts and, there's all kinds of people around. And now it's like racially segregated, nobody, none of my black friends invite me over for cookouts anymore. Granted, it's been freezing cold. It's the winter right now. But, and there's COVID. But, the ones that are still having cookouts, they don't invite me over. And it's not just for black folks, it's everybody. It's like everybody's being segregated back into their own little fucking bubbles. It's like, why? Like the real life ramifications. People are dumb. Let's just put it that way. People are dumb, and they're going to take the simplest interpretation of whatever they hear. So if they hear, all white people are racist, guess what? They're just going to assume all white people are racist. It's not going to be a nuanced take. It's not going to be, well, it might not be exactly that. It might be something else. It's just going to be all white people are racist. End of fucking discussion. And people that grew up with the historical meaning in their head, that don't look at the new meaning that they're trying to push, are just going to flip that around and be like, oh, okay, well, I guess they're all racist. And, even if I grew up with them, they're all racist. Okay. This is why changing definitions bothers the fuck out of me. And I know I'm ragging on the left side really hardcore right now. Don't get me wrong, the right does a lot of fucked up shit too. But this is actually affecting my town. It's affecting my everyday life. And, this is the problem. Most people don't give a shit enough to look it up. Most people don't give a shit enough to actually look at the nuance. They just take what's on the surface. So the people that work 40 hours a week bust their ass. And they come home and they watch the news. And they hear all white people are racist. Okay. Sure. They're not going to look into it anymore. They're not. And the ones that do might do a little bit of digging, but they're not going to sit there and full on be like, all right, what is this about? Let me sit down and take a couple hours to understand every aspect of this conversation and how it all fits together. It's like, I really wish they would have just come up with, like, not change the definition of racism. I wish they would have just made a new fucking word, because it causes too much confusion. Because the left and the right both agree racism is bad. They both agree racism is bad. So now that they changed the definition of it, the right is sitting there saying, well, I mean, your new definition is a little off. So immediately they catch them in all these gotcha moments like, oh, you believe racism is fine. No, that's not what they said. And you can call me whatever names you fucking want to call me for listening to this. I don't really give a shit. It comes right down to it. If you are trying to manipulate a conversation to get people confused, because not everybody can just differentiate the two and just be like, because every time you go into a debate or conversation, you have to set your definitions. You have to set your definitions. And if you're having a conversation with somebody just on the street or at work or at home, and one person is hearing what you're saying, but they're taking the new definitions, their own definitions into account, and you're using the old definitions, you're not going to get anywhere. There's a divide right there. It's like putting two people with two different languages in the same room and expecting them to work together to make sure the house stays in order. It's never going to work. You have to talk the same language. You have to speak the same language. Language is fucking important. You know? There's so much to bitch and rant about. There really is. Especially about the stuff that actually affects where I am and what I do, where I live. There's so much of that. But, and like I said, I'm probably going to do a fair bit of ranting about the left, just because, my God, when you have damn near all the news coverage is biased and framed toward the left, when you have all the schools and the colleges, teaching kids, leftist principles, Marxist principles, when you have the all three wings of government controlled by the left, it's kind of hard not to have it in your face 100% of the time. It's really freaking hard. And it's like, yeah, and people, and don't get me wrong, back when Trump was in office, it was a little bit more balanced, and it didn't really hit as hard, I guess, because right now, it's like, especially with the government being the way it is, all of their policies are getting pushed into effect, which are going to affect us. Like, I think one of the rants I'm going to do is going to be on slippery slopes. I hear arguments from the left all the time that certain slippery slopes, oh, it's a slippery slope, like, oh, you take some conservative policies and pretty soon you're going to be racist, but yet, they pass this Equality Act, which basically means there's no safe spaces for, actual biological females, so you can have trans men or trans females in with regular females in the bathroom, and right away a woman gets assaulted in the bathroom, and they're like, well, that wasn't a slippery slope, that's just an isolated incident. It's literally what they're worried about. You can't, how do you protect one protected class while giving rights to the other? It's kind of like, it's not going to work very well in that way. It's like shit like that's going to affect me. It's going to affect my town. It's going to affect my friends. And it's like, if, sure, then they can use whatever bathroom they want, but, then they're going to be bitching that there's going to be a line of people outside the public bathroom because they're not going to want to go in when they're in there with their kids. And they're like, I ain't sending my kid in there. Because you don't know. You can never know. And as a parent, when you're a parent, that kid's safety is paramount. It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. There's many different slippery slopes that the left just kind of just doesn't even pay attention to. There's many slippery slopes the right doesn't. But consistency is my biggest thing. If you're going to be consistent, be fucking consistent about anything that you argue, about any kind of policy that you try to push forward. And, you know, like, trans issues are freaking hard. They are freaking hard just because they're trying to integrate them with another, with what's already here. And it's like trying to mix oil and water in some cases, especially the bathroom issue. You're going to have, like, it doesn't matter if you're on the left or right. I've talked to people that are freaking far left that straight up said, I'm not taking my kids into a bathroom if there's a trans woman in there. And it's not about being transphobic. It's about being afraid of pedophiles, of possible pedophiles. And you don't put your child at risk. You know, there's some people, and that's one thing. Another subject of a rant is going to be how we have not changed as a freaking culture. We like to think that we are so much more evolved than we were 2,000 years ago. We are fucking not. We are so much the same species that we were 2,000 years ago. Plus, it doesn't even matter. You know, even 1,500 years ago, if somebody in the village said, well, we need to sacrifice a child to our gods so we get rain, some kid, poor little or some family would sit there and say, okay, take our kid. You know? And nowadays, 1,500 years later, you know, if a kid plays with a Barbie doll and he's a guy, I guess that little boy is going to be a girl because their parents' ideology tells them it should be that way. They're sacrificing their kids, you know, future one way or the other to their ideology. And, you know, and 15, 20 years from now, you're going to have lawsuits out the ass probably from kids that grew up that way, or a bunch of kids committing suicide because they didn't want that in the first place, but they was forced on them. You know, they're too young for that. They're way too young for that. When you're 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, you should not be being told what your sexual identity is going to be. You know, it's like fucking wait until they get older. They don't understand any of those constructs yet. They're 4 years old. When I was a kid, I'm a straight white dude. I'm sorry. I played with Barbies when I was a kid. You know why? Because my cousin had them, and they had a lot more flexibility, so I could act like they were Spider-Man. As soon as I got my first Spider-Man figure that was fully, like, posable, that could, like, move in the waist and on ankles and the knees and everything. Because you remember, if you're a kid and you're like 35 or older, you remember what toys were growing up, right? You could move them at the shoulders, maybe at the elbows, and maybe and definitely at the hips, but the knees barely ever moved. And how are you supposed to have a Spider-Man figure that looks like he's like just a stiff, freaking straight-ass figure flying through the air? Doesn't make no damn sense. Toys were horrible when I was a child, but Barbies were awesome for that shit. So you had to use your imagination a little bit. But, you know, I'm glad that my parents weren't that kind of ideology, because I love who I am. I don't want to I like my penis. I don't want to get rid of it. I would never think to get rid of it. You know? So, I mean, just because a kid displays some type of social trait that I don't even understand yet, or they do something for a reason that you don't understand yet, doesn't mean that they're automatically wanting to be a different gender. You know, you have to give them some time, let them grow up a little bit, you know, let them get, you know, and it's like, oh, you know, they don't want to go through puberty like that. Well, you know, I mean, how are they supposed to know what they want that way until they get into puberty? You know, can a kid honestly say that he's attracted to one sex or another before he goes through puberty? I don't know. Is there studies for that? I don't know. Somebody tell me. Anyway, there's a lot of shit to rant about. There's a lot of shit to bullshit about. And I will be doing more because I do a lot of driving. So, anyway, cheers. Y'all have fun. This is Cow. Take it easy.